The final battle had been brutal, unforgiving, and drenched in fire. Colonel Marcus Wren, commander of Earth's 22nd Strike Division, stood atop the blackened ruins of the Zilari command fortress on Vorak Prime, watching smoke coil into a sky split by lightning. 10 years of interstellar war had led to this moment. And in many ways, Marcus wasn't sure how to feel. The Zilari had been the last major galactic empire to resist the authority of the Galactic Convergence, a shaky alliance of races brought together under the banner of diplomacy, trade, and now, thanks largely to Earth military might. The Zilari rejected all that. They believed in bloodlines, dominance, and ancient traditions that included war, slavery, and absolute rule. When Earth entered the galactic stage, they saw humanity as a weak, upstart species. They were wrong. No one, not even the Convergence, had expected the humans to fight as fiercely as they did. And Marcus Wren had led them through the worst of it. His platoon had survived asteroid sieges, zero-atmosphere dogfights, and trench warfare on frozen moons. But it was here, on Vorak Prime, that the war was decided. The Zilari were entrenched, their command citadel protected by shield arrays and orbiting plasma batteries. Coalition forces hesitated, debating protocols, negotiations, and chain of command logistics. Marcus didn't. With only 50 soldiers under his command, half of them injured, he led a ground assault directly into the enemy heart. He blew through bunker walls, carved a path with grit and flamethrowers, and kicked in the doors of the throne room where the Zilari leadership cowered behind holographic declarations of divine lineage. 3 hours later, it was over. And now, standing among the wreckage, Marcus was silent. He didn't cheer. He didn't gloat. He simply watched the flames and remembered the names of those who hadn't made it. 7 days later, a ceremony was held aboard the Harmony Spire, a diplomatic station orbiting the ruins. The Galactic Convergence High Council gathered to honor Earth's contribution. Marcus was dressed in parade armor, freshly cleaned but still scorched in places. The hall was filled with dignitaries, envoys, and cameras broadcasting the event to over 60 systems. He expected a speech, maybe a plaque, perhaps a piece of land deeded to Earth. Instead, they wheeled in a platform. On it knelt a small figure, bound by shimmering golden thread. Her skin was a muted violet, eyes downcast, frame delicate and trembling. She was clearly Zilari, and judging by the ceremonial markings across her face, someone of high status. The Chancellor of the Convergence stepped forward, his voice magnified across the chamber. Colonel Marcus Wren of Earth, for your valiant service and unmatched bravery, the Convergence offers you this gift, a symbol of Zilari's surrender, a daughter of their noble bloodline, a living tribute of your victory. The room was silent, awaiting his response. Marcus blinked. You're giving me a person? She is a recognized offering according to ancient Zilari custom. Her presence signifies total subjugation of their empire. She will serve you as is tradition. Whispers rustled through the gathered officials. Some nodded approval. Others looked uncomfortable. Marcus walked forward slowly. He looked down. At the girl, she wouldn't meet his eyes. Her body was stiff, but he could see the fear in the way she clenched her fingers, how her shoulders shook just slightly. He reached down, not to grab her, but to unlock the bindings. The golden threads fell away, clinking softly to the floor. He took off his own officer's cloak, worn and battle-scorched, and gently draped it over her shoulders. Then he turned back to the assembly. She's not a gift, he said, voice low but firm. She's free. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some voices rose in protest. Others fell silent in awe. You would refuse such a gesture? The Chancellor asked, flustered. This is precedent. This is a message to the galaxy. I'm sending my own message, Marcus said, eyes hard. Humans don't take slaves, and we sure as hell don't call people gifts. He turned, leading the girl still stunned out of the chamber. She followed, steps unsure, but for the first time, her eyes met his. In that single glance, something shifted. The war might have ended with weapons, but this moment? It would echo through the galaxy louder than any explosion. For the first time in her life, she wasn't in chains, but Syrah didn't know what to do with freedom. After Marcus Wren walked her out of the ceremony hall and onto his transport ship, the Resolute, she remained quiet. She didn't speak, didn't ask questions, and never made eye contact. She ate only when told to, slept on the floor, in a corner, curled up like she was expecting someone to strike her at any moment. The crew didn't know what to make of her. Some whispered about the scandal Marcus had caused, refusing to surrender gift before the entire galactic convergence. Others just watched curiously, unsure how to hound a former noble of the Zilari Empire. But Marcus didn't entertain any speculation. She's under my protection, he said. That's all you need to know. He didn't lock her away. He didn't interrogate her. He gave her a clean room, new clothes, food, a translator device. He even removed all ranks and titles when addressing her, calling her only by what little name she had given the council, Syrah, still. For nearly 2 weeks, she didn't say a word. She watched him, though, silently, from corners, from doorways. She observed him as he treated wounded soldiers in the medbay, listened to him bark orders across comms, and saw how he addressed everyone on the ship, not with the authority of a tyrant, but with the weary burden of a leader who never asked for praise. He was nothing like the Zilari commanders she had known, nothing like the nobles who had used her as a political token since childhood. Finally, on the 10th night, she approached him while he was alone in the ship's navigation room. He looked up from a datapad, surprised to see her standing in the doorway. She stepped closer and whispered in hesitant, translated Terran. "Why free me?" Marcus tilted his head. "What? You could have kept me, like others before. I was bred for this, a gift for warlords, for conquerors." Her voice trembled, not with fear but confusion. "Why free me?" Marcus put the datapad down, because no one should be property. Not on my ship, not in my galaxy. Syrah frowned. "But I am Zilari. You are human, conqueror, enemy." He shrugged. "I'm a soldier. I fight people who need fighting. That war's over now." She studied him with furrowed brows, unsure of whether he was mocking her or being sincere. "Don't understand," she said at last. "You don't need to," Marcus replied. "You just need to live your life, whatever that means to you." For a long moment, silence lingered between them. Then Syrah bowed her head and turned to leave. But something shifted after that. The next morning, she ate breakfast in the galley with the rest of the crew. Quietly, but openly. A few days later, she began organizing the medbay, cleaning, inventorying supplies, offering help to overworked orderlies. When asked where she learned medical protocol, she replied softly, "I studied anatomy." To be a pleasing gift. Marcus winced when he overheard that. But he didn't correct her. Instead, he let her prove herself, and she did. She adapted quickly. Learned the Terran language without the translator. Started wearing standard crew attire, though she still kept Marcus's old officer cloak folded neatly in her room. When the crew realized she wasn't just a quiet presence but a competent and intelligent one, they began including her in daily routines, and one day, while they were reviewing patient reports together, she asked Marcus, "What now, warrior?" He blinked. "What do you mean? I am no longer a gift, no longer noble. What am I now?" He looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. "You're Syrah." That answer made her pause. Not a label, not a rank, just a name. her name, and for the first time, she smiled. It wasn't wide. It wasn't carefree. But it was real. And Marcus saw something in it that made him quietly set down his datapad and nod. She had begun to believe not in him, in herself. From that day on, she walked with her shoulders a little straighter, asked questions, even teased the younger medics. The crew stopped calling her the Zilari girl and started just calling her Sira. Something new was taking shape between her and Marcus, between her and the world. Not just freedom, but identity. Peace was supposed to follow victory, but Marcus Wren had learned long ago that peace in the galaxy was a fragile illusion. And now, after 6 months of quiet rebuilding and awkward diplomacy, that illusion was starting to crack. Rumors reached Earth Command. First scattered reports of skirmishes in fringe systems. Then came intercepted transmissions, encrypted messages in the old Zilari war code carrying the name Razik Thul, a cousin of the former emperor, a warlord who refused the surrender, and worse, he claimed Marcus had stolen the blood of the throne. Sira, the galaxy's most visible act of defiance, Marcus refusing the living gift, and freeing her publicly had become the symbol of everything Razik Thul hated. To him, Sira wasn't a liberated individual. She was stolen royal flesh, a humiliation that had to be erased in blood. Marcus had seen it coming. But not this soon. He was recalled to the frontier station Ravis 3 along with several veteran officers from the war. Earth Command needed intelligence, fast, and they needed Sira. She didn't hesitate. When Marcus explained the situation, she simply nodded. "I knew it wouldn't end there," she said. "You don't have to get involved," Marcus told her. "You're not a soldier." She met his gaze steadily. "Then make me one." At Ravis 3, things escalated quickly. A Zilari operative attempted to assassinate Sira in the medbay. He had snuck in posing as a refugee technician. When he made his move, he found himself disarmed, stabbed in the wrist with a scalpel, then smashed across the face with a surgical tray. By the time Marcus and security arrived, the would-be assassin was on the floor, bleeding and muttering curses in his native tongue. "She was a gift," he spat. "She was a token of honor. You've corrupted her." Sira stood over him, calm, unshaken. When Marcus asked her if she was all right, she simply replied. He hesitated. "I didn't." She said it like she was stating a fact, like it meant nothing. But Marcus saw the shift in her eyes. Not fear. Not pride. Resolve. Later, as they sat alone in his quarters, he asked her the question he'd been avoiding. "Do you want to disappear, Sira? I can get you off-world. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere safe." She stared at him. "No. I don't want to hide." "You know what this means," he said. "Razik Thul's not going to stop. And now that he knows where you are, then let him come," she interrupted. He paused. Sira stepped closer. "I spent most of my life waiting to die, not in battle but in servitude. As a gift, as someone else's reward." She looked down at her hands, still faintly stained with blood from the assassin. "Now I finally have something worth fighting for. Myself." That night, Marcus signed the authorization order. Sira would begin combat training, intelligence analysis, and tactical instruction alongside the recon division. To the rest of the galaxy, she was already a symbol of resistance. But to Marcus, she was becoming something else, dangerous in all the right ways, and she took to it like she had been waiting her whole life. Within weeks, she mastered ship systems, infiltration tactics, and field medical procedures. She joined Marcus on missions, served as his eyes and ears in regions where humans were distrusted, and became his most effective operator. But that didn't stop the ghosts from coming. Every system they visited brought whispers. The stolen? Royal, some said. The traitor, others muttered. sometimes even the one who turned on her blood. She never flinched. Instead, she leaned into the role. Owned it. Wherever she walked, Zilari dissidents paused. Coalition officers saluted. Refugees thanked her. And Marcus watched it happen slowly, how one girl, once gifted like a trophy, was becoming a force that changed entire systems. And yet, late at night, when the mission reports were filed and the corridors of the Resolute were silent, Marcus sometimes saw her sitting alone, staring out at the stars. One evening, he joined her. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded. "Just thinking." "About what?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said quietly, "I don't think I was meant to survive, Marcus. Not like this. Not with my name, my mind, my freedom." She turned to look at him. "But here I am, and now they'll come for me again." He met her gaze. "Then let them. We'll be ready." The declaration came without ceremony, without warning. A galactic broadcast, dark, jagged, and spoken in the guttural Zilari dialect, was transmitted across 3 sectors. It showed a tall figure clad in ceremonial armor standing before the quay. Remnants of the Zilari war fleet. His eyes burned with vengeance, and his voice echoed with venom. "Return the traitor Sira, or burn." The message was signed, Razik Thol, Sovereign of the Broken Crown, Warlord of the Surviving Blood. It wasn't just a threat, it was a statement of purpose. The Zilari remnants had regrouped faster than anyone expected. Pirates, slavers, mercenary remnants, all now answered to Razik Thol. And he wasn't just after vengeance, he was after Sira. Marcus Wren didn't hesitate. He transmitted no reply. No diplomatic delay. Instead, he turned the Resolute back toward the Outer Rim and began preparing for war. His first objective: reinforce Ravis III, the critical convergence outpost near the border worlds. But they were too late. By the time his fleet arrived, Ravis III was already in flames. Razik Thol's fleet had struck with precision surgical strikes on shield generators, orbital bombardment on power plants, and ground troops deployed with brutality that hadn't been seen since the war. The Zilari weren't just fighting. They were purging. Their message was clear. No traitors. No mercy. Sira stood on the bridge of the Resolute, jaw tight, eyes focused on the sensor feeds as burning wreckage filled the screen. She didn't ask for orders. She gave them. Deploy drones to scan the lower city. Survivors might still be trapped under the administrative dome. Marcus glanced at her and nodded. He didn't need to command her anymore. She had become a leader in her own right, quiet, precise, and unrelenting. The few surviving defenders of Ravis III called her the Ghost of the Empire. Among the Zilari, she was now known by a darker name, Zerkai, which roughly translated to the blood-shamed flame. Sira didn't flinch at any of it. She was done hiding from her past. Over the next 3 months, the war escalated. Small outposts fell, trade routes burned, colonies vanished. And still Razik Thol sent the same message before each attack: return her or die with her. But Marcus wasn't about to hand her over. She had saved his people, earned her place, through fire, not birthright. And he knew deeply that giving her back would not stop the war. It would only validate everything Razik Thol stood for. So they fought together. Sira infiltrated abandoned Zilari outposts, retrieving command, codes, and decrypting fleet routes. She uncovered hidden shipyards producing stolen convergence tech. More than once, she went behind enemy lines, slipping through old noble protocols, speaking with just enough aristocratic edge to deceive loyalist commanders before turning their own systems against them. Her most daring mission came on Daros 5, where she walked alone into a Zilari-controlled intelligence vault wearing a stolen house crest. She exited 2 hours later with a data core and a bleeding cut across her ribs. But she smiled. "They still think I'm one of them," she told Marcus, panting from the blood loss. "Let's use that." Then came the final battle dot above Orion's edge, a dying star system where Razikthol had positioned his fleet. He had expected a frontal assault. What he didn't expect was that his ship's internal systems had already been sabotaged. By Syrah. She had uploaded a dormant virus weeks earlier, hidden in a message supposedly sent from a loyalist noble. It activated when Razikthol powered his primary cannons. Half his fleet locked down. The other half turned on itself in the chaos. Marcus led the assault fleet. Syrah boarded the flagship herself. She didn't kill Razikthol. She stood before him, bloodied, unarmed, and spoke in the language of the nobility. "You could have built a future, but you chose pride." His answer was a roar of rage and a wild lunge with a plasma blade. He didn't reach her. She stepped aside, took the blade from his hand mid-swing, and ended it with one clean stroke. The galaxy watched it all. The Convergence broadcast it live. Former Zilari noble, a gift once presented in chains. Now the one to end the war. When it was done, she stood on the ruined bridge, looked at Marcus, and said only, "Now it's truly over." He nodded. But what they both knew, deep down, was that the real fight, the one for meaning, for purpose, was just beginning. The war had ended for real this time. Got no more broadcast threats. No more ambush in the fringe systems. The name Razikthol had been buried alongside his flagship. The Zilari remnants, leaderless and fractured, either surrendered or disappeared into the void. For most, this was the time to celebrate. There were parades, awards, speeches across every major convergence world. And at the center of it all, the two names that stood highest in the victory archives, Colonel Marcus Wren and Syrah of the Broken House. But Marcus declined the glory. He turned down promotion, turned down the medals, refused a seat on the High Council. He gave only one public statement: "I've seen enough war to last 10 lifetimes. Let others write the history. I'm going to live it." And then, quietly, he left. He disappeared to Veda 9, a small frontier colony world nestled in the green mist of the Lyrian Nebula. The place was quiet, untamed, peaceful, and far away from the power plays of the galactic core. He didn't go alone. Syrah went with him. Together, they bought a modest homestead just outside the main colony ring. They built it with their own hands walls of composite stone, solar glass panels on the roof, and native trees growing in the yard. Nothing extravagant. Nothing that screamed war heroes. Just a home. Marcus planted vegetables. Syrah learned to cook them. He repaired old tech for nearby settlers. She ran a small clinic from one of the outer rooms, patching up farming injuries and stubborn illnesses with precision and compassion. She even began teaching Zilari anatomy to the local students, most of whom had never seen a Zilari before. To them, she wasn't an ex-princess or a warrior. She was just Syrah, and to Marcus, that was more than enough. But her story didn't stay hidden for long. Visitors came. First, out of curiosity then, Reverence. A young Convergence cadet showed up one day with a copy of the War Tribunal archives and asked Syrah to sign the page where she dismantled Razikhthol's fleet. She laughed and shook her head. "I didn't do it for a legacy. I did it to be free." Another time, a Zilari refugee arrived, trembling, and asked if it was true if she had once been a gift and now lived freely among humans. Sire, I invited her inside. Made tea, spoke gently. "You don't need to be who they told you to be," she said. "You get to choose now." And soon, more came. Women, outcasts, survivors of systems where tradition still held chains tight around throats. Syrah spoke too. them all not as a leader, but as someone who understood the weight of being born into servitude. They called her the flame that broke chains, but she never referred to herself that way. To Marcus, she was simply Syrah, a woman who had once stood silent in a cage and now smiled as children pulled at her sleeves, asking for stories. At night, when the sky blazed with nebula light, they'd sit under the stars. Sometimes they talked about the war, about the friends they'd lost, the enemies they didn't hate but pitied, the paths they could have taken, and the futures they almost didn't survive to see. But other nights, they didn't speak at all. They just sat close, shoulder to shoulder, and listened to the quiet. No alarms, no sirens, just wind and birds and life moving forward. Years passed, and while others argued over who Syrah had been, was she a rebel, a hero, a weapon? She lived each day simply. She healed wounds, grew food, wrote her own name in the local registry, not with a title, but a simple line, Syrah, no house, no chains. And when a historian eventually tracked her down for an official biography, she agreed only on one condition: Marcus Wren's name had to appear before hers. He didn't save me, she said softly. He freed me. But I did the rest. The galaxy changed slowly, but wherever liberation took root, wherever an enslaved world found its voice, they often found a little wooden plaque nailed to the walls of their new schools and homes. It bore no crest, no military sigil, just a quote.